with the movement phase. Starting with the French, they are the phasing player with initiative. Interesting, they have two brigades. Over here they have the Saxon Brigade, hesitant, and their Central Infantry Brigade is also hesitant, which pretty much restricts their movement, their normal movement in the turn. You can change formation unless you're within 15 centimeters of an enemy close order unit, which is basically any unit that's not in skirmish order. So formation changing is possible, and you can also go from formed or unformed to formed. In other words, you can reform, which is what I want to do. Central Brigade has a unit there that's unformed. You cannot take any forward movement, no movement that brings you closer to the enemy. So I don't really want to move forward at this point anyway. I definitely want to reform that one battalion. This is for the French right here. So they're going to reform. That'll take away this unformed marker. I got hit by some artillery in the previous turn. Another thing that's interesting is artillery cannot shoot at long range. That kind of takes this battery out of play for counter battery fire against this unit over here. So I won't be able to fire on them. But that's okay. So normally you have to shoot at the closest, which would be this unit of infantry. So as long as this isn't at long range, I can fire on them. Another thing to note about shooting, artillery shooting, is that they can ignore the closest target to instead shoot at an enemy battery of guns, even if it's further away. And that's basically what I've been doing with these French for a while now. But yeah, I think we're going to shoot at this guy right here, this little central battalion, and see if we can do some damage. Let me check the range, make sure it's not at long range, which I believe is 40 centimeters. Get it right there for artillery. Right here's long range. These are 6 to 9 pounders, 40 to 85 centimeters. So as long as it's less than 40, we are good. We're at about 39, if you can believe that. So we're definitely going to put some fire down on them. But that's in the firing phase. We're still in the movement at the moment. That's pretty much it. I don't have anything else to do. I basically reformed that one French battalion right there. They have 2 casualties. So far, everything in the French army has taken damage. They still got plenty of fresh units, though. There's only like 3 units that are no longer fresh. That's this battalion with 4 casualties, this battalion with 6, and the Saxon battery of guns with 6, which is currently limbered. Thinking about pulling them back over here and just holding a nice position in case there's a withdrawal. Or I could bring them on the flank over here and do some more damage. But again, I'm trying not to be too aggressive. Yeah, in the melee, if units took part in the charge sequence, they cannot move. So these guys are all done. They all took part in the melees. We got these guys that were supporting, charged. Yeah. For the Russians, they're next for their movement. Pretty much know what they're going to do. They don't have any hesitant battalions. All their cavalry up here is involved in melees. They did stuff in the charge sequence, so they're done. They can't do anything. But these 3 battalions are good to go. So what we're going to do is I'm going to use some forward movement with a wheel, I think, to bring these guys forward. These guys, I think, are going to step back another shot. And I'm not sure what I'm going to do with this battalion up here. I'm going to bring them forward, I guess. They can move 15 centimeters. That's quite far. So let's start with him. See how far I can get. They're in column. The attack column, they move 15 centimeters. So we're going to move at least, that's kind of far. Let's put them up here at 7. And then we will wheel the rest of that is what, 8 centimeters, I believe. It's about 5 centimeters. We don't want to go too far because my flank is being endangered. So right there would be good for now. Actually, pull them back just a little bit. And they'll be good to change formation to line, possibly. We'll see. These guys are stepping back, which is a maximum of 5 centimeters for infantry. So that puts them here. Actually, I don't think I want to go that far back either. I want this battalion to go on a line. I want room. But I don't think I want to go too far back. No, I'm actually good where I was, I think. Well, whatever. There they are. Looks good to me. They do count as moving. So they'll be penalized if and when they shoot. These guys can move 15. I think I'm going to wheel them as well. We're going to move a nice 10 forward to here. And I'm not too sure I want to reserve. I think I want to kind of get... I don't know, folks. I see this unit is pretty fragile at the moment. But, you know what? I'm going to go for it. I'm going to give it the old wheel anyway. So we're going to put him here. See what comes of that. Probably nothing. And the cannons will remain stationary. Move my commander up just a little bit. You can move 30. That's good enough for now. So it's pretty much a disaster for the Russians, I think, no matter how you look at it. We'll see. But that's the Russian movement. So we're going to leave it at that. We're going to go right to the shooting phase. Right now we're going to get to shooting phase. And that starts off with the phasing player once again. Non-phasing player, where are we? Right here. Phasing player fires, non-phasing player fires. So let's do that. And we're going to start off with the French, of course, because they are the phasing player. Remember, both of these brigades are both hesitant, so I didn't really change the distance between the enemy. These skirmishers are definitely going to open fire. Down to 2 bases so far. 1 more casualty and they're going to be removed from the battlefield. 3 casualties means remove a base. Less than 2 bases in the unit, remove the unit. So that's the situation. So we're going to be fired with that unit on here. Where else are we going to fire? Looks like just our artillery. Another thing to keep in mind with hesitant brigades is their arc of fire is limited to straight ahead rather than the 45-degree arc to the front. So they can only shoot straight ahead, that corridor that extends straight ahead. I'm not sure if that applies to the skirmishers or not. I'll have to check that. But it doesn't matter in this case. Their target is right in front of them. So the artillery, and again, the artillery is also restricted in their range category. They can only shoot at effective range, which is less than 40 centimeters. So yeah, we are going to definitely fire on this unit. So the skirmishers and the artillery are both firing here. Okay, let's start off with the skirmishers and see what they can do. Now, if you remember, the number of dice you roll is based on the size of the unit. And it's 2 strong, so it's 2 casualty dice. 2 dice from rolling, needing 4s or greater. Modifiers. Again, skirmisher tasking. That's a ADC task they can get, and they'll get a +1 if they had that. I don't have that on here. Really none of this applies except for the bottom one. Not enough casualties to merit a penalty. Targeted skirmishers, well, actually none of them apply. So I'm going to roll 2 dice. They need 4 pluses. And that's cocked. This was a miss. 3, nothing. Well, that was a shame. Now the artillery is going to fire, and they are at effective range, firing at a unit in line. This time we're going to see we're at effective range, of course. Artillery, go down the modifiers here. Casualties, we only have 2, So no modifier for that. That's it. The target itself, column, blah, blah, blah. Square, massed infantry, deployed battery skirmishers in cover. None of them apply, so it's a straight up 2d6 roll. And we're going to be using the standard, or no, we're going to be using effective range artillery. There's the possibilities of what we can cause. So if I got a 12, it'd be 4 casualties and a discipline test on the target. That would be devastating. So let's roll our 2d6, no modifiers. We got a 5 and a 4. Total of 9. Let's check it out. 9. Effective range results in 2 casualties and a discipline test, which is taken immediately. So 2 casualties, their 4 becomes 6. That's not good because at that level they start to become penalized. Let me see here. If they shot back, where are they? Casualties. 4 plus, they'll get a -1. 8 plus or 10 plus, it's a -2. So yeah, they already have that penalty anyway. So now it's even worse. Typically a unit is dispersed, taken off the table. Depends on their training level. Usually it's 10 or 12. Usually it's 12, 10 for recruits and things like that. So you can see where they stand in terms of their fatigue in the battlefield or casualties. Now they have to make a discipline test. And again, that is a separate chart which I referred to last time. Basically they make a 2d6 roll. Down here they apply some modifiers and they basically need a 7+ to continue as is. Anything less and they're running the risk of extra casualties, retreats, and so on. So let's roll that 2d6 for them. That's not very good. And they get a 6, 7, 8. That's not a good roll. Well, it is as long as we don't get any modifiers. So let's see. They are line, so it's no modifier for that. General attached, no. Flanked, unformed. They're not unformed. Casualties down here, right here we'd look at 4+ and 8+. They are at 6, so they suffer a -1 for the casualties. So there it is. That's the penalty. So 8 -1 is 7. So they are right on the brink. Double check, make sure there's no more modifiers. Nope, that's it. So 7+ unit obeys orders and remain formed. So they lucked out. They only had a -1 on that. So they'll obey orders, no problems. Next we're going to go to the Russians because I don't think any of the other French are able to shoot. Let me double check some range here. 15 centimeters. Closest point to closest point? No. Okay, let's go to the Russians. See what they get. Now they all move, so they're going to be penalized if they fire. Let me check the range here. Once again, the target's here. Possibly this way. Let's see. I can't really see a heck of a lot of the target. I don't think I'll let them do that. That would be the 45, so I'm not going to allow that fire, just well out of the arc. Plus they're in a column, they're penalized anyway, so it wouldn't be very effective. But this unit, they did move, if you remember. They will be firing on these skirmishers once again. These skirmishers are annoying. I can at least try and finish them so I can open up the fire lane to the oncoming infantry. And the artillery can fire as well. They're not restricted to effective range because they're not hesitant. So my choice would either be shoot at the closest target, which is this unit, or counter battery fire, which I think is long range. That would be long range. This would be effective range. Most definitely. So I think I'm going to pound away. After receiving 6 casualties so far, which sucks, I'm going to fire on the infantry, do as much damage as I can. Yeah, so we're going to do that. We roll 2d6 for the cannon on these infantry. I don't think there's going to be bounce through. I'll check that. There's my 2d6. 9. Let's check our modifiers. Let's see, artillery. I don't think there's any modifiers here. Yes, there is. We got 6 plus casualties. That's -2. So we got a -2. Didn't move. Not informed the target. None of them apply. And then there's this. So it's a total of -2. So we got 9. Knocked down to 7. Total of 7. Let's see what we got. 7 under effective range for artillery. Right there, battery effective range. 1 casualty. Nice and simple. Well, we did 1 casualty on him. So 2 becomes 3. I can see right away that these casualties on my artillery battery kind of hurting me. A -2 is not good. All right, that's that. Now we'll come back to these guys in the middle here. We'll fire on these skirmishers. Again, we're going to be rolling 2d6 standard, and let's check the modifiers. We're over here now. We're infantry. Casualties were at 6, so we don't suffer anything but this one here, so it's a -1. We did move, so we're using the inferior volley. So inferior volley plus -1. Target skirmishers, where are they? I know they're there. -2. So -3 total, and we're using the inferior volley because we moved. So inferior volley, and we're -3. Inferior volley. Oh, man. -1. I don't think a double 1 means anything. It does for artillery. That would be low on ammunition if that was artillery firing. So that didn't apply. So we're here under this column under inferior volley. FD, fatigue. Oh, wait a minute, FD. That is loss of fire discipline. All right, that's marked with a cloud of smoke. I'll put that on top of the unit to indicate they have lost fire discipline. Basically, that's going to penalize their firing. They'll automatically get that back. The movement phase, I believe. So it's not a big issue, but it will penalize their fire. It slows things, basically. And that's about it, I believe, for shooting. French have shot, the Russians have shot. That is it. Okay, folks, we're ready to go into that big phase. That's what it's all about at the moment. Melee. So we're going to go into that one next. We're going to fight the melees. As you can see, we've got 2 of them up here, 2 cavalry engagements. We got the hussars going at each other, French and the Russians. This guy has his commander attached with the glory task. This unit over here has gained Elan, so they're going to get a bonus in the melee. That's these Cossacks going against these hussars. So we'll see what happens. Should be interesting. All right, folks, stay tuned. Melee is next. Hey, folks, let's get into the melee. I'll show you the sequence here. Basically straightforward. You fight the melees. It's all simultaneous, so there's none of that initiative going to come into play. The possible second round can be fought, and that's the maximum number of rounds that can be fought in a turn. If there is a second round, both sides will have an opportunity to reinforce the melee. One thing to keep in mind with melees is the maximum number of units in total that can fight in a single melee is 6, which is basically 3 per side. So that's worth keeping in mind. In our case, look at our melees. We have 2 separate melees. 2 units are involved. 2 units are in contact. This melee over here, same thing. We have 2 units involved. There are supporting units to these combats that have the potential to reinforce if we go into a second round, but we'll see what happens. Basically, you resolve each one at a time, and the way we do that is each side each unit involved. Let's start here with this melee. Well, each unit will roll a number of dice based on its type. Infantry and cavalry roll 5. If they're Cossacks, they only roll 4. And unfortunately, if they're artillery, they only roll 3. So that's the standard number of dice any unit will roll. So in this case, we got French hussars. They're cavalry, so they're going to have 5 dice to roll. Same thing for the Russians. They're hussars, cavalry, so they're going to have 5 dice to roll. Now, the number of dice you roll is also modified. So let's go to the play sheet here and look up melee. And once again, we have it clarified how many dice a unit will roll. 4 for Cossacks, 3 for artillery, so on. Now, the minimum is 1, so any unit will always roll at least 1 die. Now, each unit now goes through the 3 columns of modifiers, which is located here for all kinds of things. Like if they're heavy cav, they gain bonus at +2 CD. If they're a large unit, they gain a CD. If they have a general attached to, also has the glory task assigned to them, that's +1 CD, and so on. And once you know how many dice to roll, that unit rolls its dice, and it needs a 4 or greater to cause a casualty. The side causing the most casualties is deemed the winner of the melee. The differential between the casualties is then referred to on the melee results table. You find the differential column and you reference it with the type of units involved in that particular melee. For instance, our melee right here is all cavalry. It's cavalry versus cavalry. So if we had, say, a differential of 1, we'd look under this column. Let's say the French won. They caused more casualties. They'd be deemed the winner, and their result would be take the ground and they become unformed. The loser retreats. So you see each result here tells you what the winner will do, what happens to the winner, and what happens to the loser. So there you go. There are some notes down here referring to some of these things like fight on or firefight. A reference down here, and they're also described fully in the rules. So that's the procedure. And again, every unit will roll its own little lot of dice that's involved in the melee. And once all the units in that melee have rolled their dice, total all the casualties that were caused, find the differential, and apply the results. So that's how it works. In this case, we've only got 2 units involved. And there's the standard number of dice per side. Now let's look at the modifiers and see if any of those are modified. Now we'll look at both units at once here. None of these apply. General attached if he has the glory task. That does apply. As you can see, the Russian commander here, Brigadier, does have the glory task assigned to him. That's going to give him a +1 casualty die. So the Russians are going to get a bonus die. Well, that unit anyway gets a +1 die. And again, every unit goes through this procedure separately. Elan, each morale grade above opponents, or all opponents actually, gains a +1 CD. Casualties if they're unformed, so on. So none of these other modifiers apply, so we're good to go. We're going to roll the dice. One thing I should note here, for general attached and glory, there's a note, number 3. It says attached generals have no benefit without glory. So just to clarify that. So now what we're going to do is we're going to roll our dice. Both sides roll, and they're looking for 4s or greater to cause a casualty. So we'll get rid of the 1s, 2s, and 3s. So there we go. We got 4 casualties caused on the French hussars. Now let's see what the French do. Again, they need 4 pluses. And they did pretty good. They got 4 casualties scored on the Russians. So before we go any further, let's mark these units with casualties. First of all, the French caused 4 casualties on the Russians. So we'll put 4 casualties on the Russian unit. Boom. And 3 casualties were caused on the French hussars. So let's put 3 casualties on them. So there we go. Once that is done, in other words, each unit has rolled their dice, and and casualties are applied, we look at the differential. In this case, it's 1. The combat difference is 1, which isn't substantial. The winner, of course, is the French. So let's look under cavalry versus cavalry with a differential of 1. It's just like we were looking at. Winner, that would be the French. They caused the most casualties. Take the ground and become informed. Losers, that's the Russian hussars, they retreat. The first thing we want to do is carry out the retreat. One little side note here, it says with the asterisk, artillery uses the infantry results columns. Routing and retreating artillery will disperse. So the artillery would be removed from the table. So let's carry this out, starting with the retreaters. Before I do that, one thing that has to be done is the risk to generals. Anytime you have a general attached to a unit and it is forced to retire, it loses the combat, in this case retreats, it has to roll on the destiny table. So we have to do that first. I almost forgot. Let's grab our destiny table here. Now, in this case, it's a risk to general test, really. So what that means is that you ignore all these results except the 2 and the 10 to 12 results. So when I make this roll, if I roll a 2 or a 10 or 12, it's not going to be good. So any other result is ignored. So for the Russians, let's roll that right away. So anything but a 2 or a 10 to 12. 6. So we're good. So no problem for the commander. Now let's get back to resolving this retreat move. First thing we're going to do is take a look at the retreat move distance. I believe it's, let's see, evade and retire retreats. They are 35 centimeters for cavalry. So yeah, the first 10 centimeters is straight back. And the units I pass through or interpenetrate will become unformed. There's nobody back there. Let's move these out of the way. So he's going to fall back to this position here. From this point on, the remainder of the distance, which, let's see, it's going to be 25 centimeters, I can do within 45 degree arc around units, so on and so forth. I can end the retreat move behind a formed, or a close order unit, I should say. It really is not. I'm not going to worry about that, really. I want to put them back in this direction. So let's bend the camera down so you can see where I'm going a little bit, what I'm talking about. Now, there is some cavalry there. So here's the 10, and then from here, I'm going to move like this. And this is considered to be a column of mob when I get done here. That'll be 25 centimeters all the way back to here. So these guys are way back here. I'll end facing the enemy. And I'm going to put these guys in kind of a ramshackle formation to remind me. They are retreating, so we're going to mark them with a retreat marker. And bring along their little casualties. And of course, the general's with them. And fortunately, he's not killed or dishonored or anything like that, so he's good. He got carried away by the retreat. Now, let's resolve for the French themselves. What happens to them? Of course, their result was retire, which is basically being recalled. They're blown. They're not going to be effective at this point until they regroup and gather themselves. No, I'm wrong. I got the wrong result. Sorry about that. They actually are take the ground unformed. So what that means is they occupy, it's an option, they don't have to do this. They can occupy the ground that the opponent unit was in. We're going to do that. So we're just going to occupy this. We don't change facing or formation or anything like that. We just, as an option, can occupy the ground. But we are informed as a result of all the crazy fighting going on here. So there, that's what it looks like. That is the first combat resolved. There is no second round to that combat. And we're ready to move on to the next combat, which is right there. Now the next combat is pretty much the same situation, except the Cossacks, they're only going to roll 4 dice, if you remember. Normally units roll 5. Cossacks only roll 4. They're going against Hussars. French Hussars, they're normal cavalry, so we'll give them 5 dice. There we go. Now it's time to look at modifiers. If I get the right sheet out here. Let's see what we got to apply here. Blah, blah, blah. One thing I should point out is that technically, rules-wise, these units of cavalry would be classed as small units. They're only 2 squadrons each. But so far in the game, I haven't been counting them as small, and I'm going to continue that. I'm just going to treat them as standard size units. Just keep that in mind. General attached? No. Each morale grade above opponents. Let me make a quick look at my reference sheet there. Yeah. In this case, this would apply. Each morale grade above all opponents. Now, this is simply a one-on-one. The morale grade of the Cossacks is recruit, and the French morale grade is line. So the difference is 1. And you can find that in the rules. The different morale grades, just like elite, veteran, that kind of thing. But so the difference is 1, and the advantage goes to the French. So the French are going to gain a +1 die. Meleeing with Elan, that is the Cossacks, they do gain the +1. There's a note here. Number 4 says +2 casualty die if the infantry in attack column. Not the case. So a +1 for the Russians. And I believe that's it. There is some casualties on the French, but it's not enough to cause any kind of penalty. No one is unformed, so on and so forth. So there's our modifiers. The Cossacks basically get a bonus of 1 for being under Elan, and the French Hussars are morale grade higher than the Cossacks, so they gain 1 dice as well. So we're looking at 6 dice for the French, 5 for the Russians. Let's roll the Russians. Again, you need 4s or greater. Whoever does the most casualties is the winner. Get rid of 1s, 2s, and 3s. So the Cossacks did pretty good. They got 3 hits there. Unfortunately, you can't see the dice roll. There you are. Glare. Now let's roll for the French. Get rid of the 3s, 2s, and 1s. That is unfortunate for the French anyway. So the winner of this combat will be the Russians. Let's apply those casualties right off the bat. The French already have 2 casualties on them. That's going to be bumped up 3 more. So they're at 5 casualties. So they are no longer a fresh unit. And in return, the Cossacks are going to take 2 casualties. I mark that there in my little dice pot. And that's that. So the winner is the Russians by a differential of 1. So let's take a look at that on the sheet and see what's going to happen here. Cavalry versus cavalry, differential of 1. Pretty much the same as before. Winner, take the ground unformed. Losers, retreat. So it's basically the same exact situation as before, except the Russians won this time. So let's retreat the French, and the Russian Cossacks will occupy the ground and become unformed. Carried out the retreat move. They have now, the French anyway, have withdrawn 10 straight back, and then they retreated behind this unit here, kind of in that formation. They are marked with retreat. So that's that. Russians decided to hold their ground. They had the option of occupying this ground in front of them. They decided not to. They are marked currently unformed for being in the combat. Now, at this point, the losing side, which was the French, if the main unit was forced to retreat, retire, or dispersed, and so on, they're going to be forced to step back if they're a supporting unit and did not fight in the actual combat. If that is the case, and they are within 5 centimeters of an enemy unit, which these guys are, they must immediately make a step back move. And a step back, looking at our movement chart once again, for cavalry is going to be 15 centimeters, I believe, It's right there for cav. So they have to make a step back move. We're going to straight back 15 centimeters. And the reason for that is because they are within 5 centimeters of this enemy unit. So let's put him back 15. I'm going to put him straight back all the way. I don't want all my units hanging out in the front there all by themselves. French kind of got bested in this, which is quite surprising. And there we go. And of course, they're facing the enemy. So there it is, folks. That is a melee. That was a pretty simple one, actually, to resolve. I don't think I missed anything. If I did, let me know in the comments. If I get it done before this series of videos ends, I will correct it, or otherwise make mention of it in the video. But there you go. That's the end of both melees. They have been resolved. There was no second round for either melee. Quite surprised, actually, that the Russians did so well. Well, actually, they didn't over here. These are French. They did lose on that side, but they did win on this side. So, pretty interesting. In this case here, they only won by a differential of 1. So, maybe that elan helped out after all. That was pretty good. So there you go, folks. That is the melee phase. One other thing I'd like to take a look at is what happens when you fight a second round. There is something called bringing in reinforcements or reinforcing a melee. How does that work? What is that all about? So I thought I'd reset up these units here and show you, give you an idea of how that works and how you'd fight a second round. And as you know, you only fight a maximum of 2 rounds in any melee phase. So twice per turn, and that's it. So let's assume that we have a unit of Cossacks and a unit of French Hussars that just fought 1 round of melee. And supporting these units during the charge was this unit of Russian Cossacks and this unit of French Dragoons. So they were in support originally. Also, this unit of French Hussars was not supporting, but it is currently unformed. Just happens to be close by to the action. Also in the back is another unit of French Hussars who were not supporting either. They were also sitting back, lingering. So they're basically fresh and they're holding back. So the only units involved in this melee or in this charge were these 2 units fighting and these 2 units supporting the melee. Now, these 2 just fought. They fought to a complete draw, and both have elected to fight on. So they took their casualties, they're holding their ground, and they're ready to go at it one more time. But before we do that, both sides have the opportunity to bring on reinforcements, to reinforce the melee, if you will. Now, the only requirement for a unit to be brought in as reinforcements, the only requirements, I should say, it's plural, is they have to be formed. In other words, not marked as unformed, and they have to be in command radius. And if you remember, that's 30 centimeters from your brigadier. Let's look at this unit. It's within command. It's within 30 centimeters of the brigadier. It's also formed. This unit here, same thing. It's within command, and it is formed. These other units, this one here is unformed, so he's not eligible to come into this melee. This unit back here is formed and is also in command, so this unit meets the requirements to be brought in as reinforcements. Now, secondly, in order to be brought in as reinforcements, the unit concerned, let's take a look at this unit of Cossacks, must either be a supporting unit of the melee, which it was, or for cavalry, within 10 centimeters of the melee, which this unit is. Now for infantry, it has to be within 5 centimeters of the melee. Now the definition of melee is basically the footprint of the actual units involved in the melee. So this entire little rectangle area, basically the bases of the units involved in the melee. So if this cavalry unit is within 10 centimeters of any part of this melee, be it a friend's base edge or an enemy target's edge, they can be brought in as a reinforcement. as it stands, they qualify for both instances. They're within 10 centimeters, and they were a supporting unit. Excuse me. The second unit, same situation. They're within 10 of the footprint of the melee. And they were also a supporting unit, so either way they can be brought in. This unit, of course, is unformed. They're not being considered. This unit was not a support unit, okay, but it does qualify to be brought in because it is within 10 centimeters of the melee. Okay, so there you go. That's the only qualifications you need to follow to be brought in as a reinforcement. Once you've figured that out, go ahead and move these guys into contact with one of the units that's involved in the melee, the footprint, to use that term once again. Now, I just move them forward into contact. You can move them in various ways that you find makes sense. I'm just going to move all these guys up like this so they're at least touching the unit involved, just like that. I guess if you wanted, you could move these guys up like this, make it look a little bit more dramatic. The rules don't really explicitly describe how you do it. It just says you move up into contact with the melee. So let's assume that we put them like this. Although I would say it's probably just move them the shortest distance into contact. But we're going to do this. Now at this point you're all set, you're ready to fight this melee. Now, make sure you double check here. Remember that no melee can exceed 6 units in total, 3 per side. So we got 2 Russian units, 3 French units involved. So it's 5 total units, 3 French, 2 Russian. They're good. They can fight this second round of melee. Now the procedure is pretty much like we did in the first round. It's basically every unit gets a fixed number of dice, and then they go through the modifiers to modify that number of dice they're going to roll, and they roll those dice, again needing 4+ to cause a casualty. Let's say they cause 2 casualties. And you do that for each unit, one at a time. So they've all rolled their dice and caused a certain total of casualties. Now, let's say that these 2 Russian units, let's say this unit caused 2 casualties and this Russian unit caused 3. So that's a total of 5 casualties caused on the French. Now let's say that the French units caused a total of 3. Let's say he caused 1, he didn't cause any, and this unit caused 2, whatever it is. But this is the results. At this point, you'd apply the casualties. Now, the rule here is that you distribute the casualties as evenly as possible on the enemy units. So let's see, the French caused 3, there's 2 Russian units, so that's 1 each, and any odd one would go on the original charging unit, which would be this unit. So he would take 2 casualties. And it'd be done the same with on the French when we got these 5 casualties, and so on. Once that's done, you determine the winner, which in this case would be the Russians, and you find the differential, which is 2. So if we look that up on our chart, 2 under a cavalry versus cavalry melee, right there, Russians were the winner. They would return to their own lines, which basically means they're reforming, they're regrouping, they're being recalled. And the losers retreat. So basically, all the French units would retreat, and both of the Russian units would retire, being recalled. So that's how it would work. It's very simple and straightforward. No messing about. So you can see how brutal a combat could be with so many units involved. In this case, 5. That's a lot of potential dice rolls. So it can get pretty bloody, and a decision is found quite quickly. So there you go, folks. That's a little look, a deeper look at how a combat would go 2 rounds. So there you go. One thing I need to point out here, now I talked to the author and clarified this with him, but units that are in retreat or routing, as soon as they rally, they are considered unformed. So as soon as these units of Cossacks, and I believe the French unit as well, rally from their retreat status in this case, I got to remember to mark them as unformed. They are unformed from the point that they rally. Basically what that means is they're going to have to reform up by sacrificing their movement in a movement phase in order to get rid of this marker, become formed again. Now that came into play in this example combat up here. If you remember, I believe these Cossacks were in retreat. They rallied in the command phase, but I didn't mark them as unformed. And what they did during that same turn's movement phase is they made a sidestep and they were in a supporting role. They basically were unformed and were not able to do that. So yeah, that was the situation there. So remember, folks, when you rally from retreat or rout, you become unformed and will need to reform up. So keep that in mind. Now, one other thing we have to keep in mind here, that I didn't point out, is brigade morale. If you have 2 units retreating from your brigade, that brigade immediately becomes marked as faltering. We can see that stuff here on the play sheet where you cover brigade status. 2 or more retreating units, you are faltering. 1 or more retreating or dispersed, routed or dispersed units equals faltering. And that applies immediately as soon as it occurs. So in our case over here with the melees, we got the French cavalry brigade with 1 unit in retreat. So it's not faltering, it's all right. 2 units retreating would immediately mark it as faltering. And the same applies to the cavalry brigade for the Russians. They have 1 unit in retreat. So there's no effect on brigade morale at this point. So yeah, we got to keep that in mind. All right, folks, there you go. That's another turn. I videoed 2 turns. I hope that gives you guys an idea of how the game of General D'Armée plays out, how it works, some of the detail. That ends the melee phase, and it also brings the turn to an end. At that point, all of the hesitant markers would be removed, and those 2 French brigades in the center and the Saxon one, they were both hesitant. They are no longer at this point. As they go into the next turn, they'll go through their command phase and roll to see if they remain hesitant or they suddenly become steady. Lots of interesting things in this game. I like the detail. I think it's in the right places, especially with charging and melee. It makes that a very interesting high mark of the game, and I enjoy that with Napoleonic gaming. I like that kind of detail. I like the command effects of being hesitant. I like how it reduces your fire range for artillery and your fire arcs, as well as your movement, at least the movement forward. I like that. I enjoyed that. I was kind of worried about all the casualty markers. I thought there'd be, this game must be heavy in math when it comes to keeping track of casualties. I mean, man, 40 units destroyed, they can take, what, 10, 12 casualties before they're dispersed, depending on the unit. I think it's less for artillery, 8 or something like that. But I was kind of worried about that. But actually, not at all. I kind of like seeing the accumulation of casualties on units. And in some cases, if it's 3 or less, it really has no effect. The unit's still fresh, so you're not worried about it. But gradually, they start to deteriorate and become less efficient and effective in the battle. I like that. I also like the decisiveness as well as the detail of charging and melees. As you can see, they can be quite devastating, especially with 2 rounds worth of fighting. You get a lot of dice when you bring in reinforcing units. But anyway, I'm going to post these videos up in, say, 2 or 3 parts to kind of consolidate all the separate videos so that you guys can get a better idea. Sit in one sitting and see all this stuff as I go from turn to turn, phase to phase, and try and cover in as much detail as I can how I am interpreting the game, how I am learning the game, as well as my impressions of it. I have been talking with the author a little bit here and there, and frequenting the forum on General de Brigade, as well as the 2 Fat Lardies website, asking a few questions here and there. And I must say the author is quick to reply, as always. He's always on those forums. Quick to help with any questions you might have. So that's been a plus in learning the game. Always a plus in learning any new set of rules. So there you go, folks. I hope that gives you an idea. If you like this kind of video, if you like where you see the dice roll by dice roll and little tidbits of rules thrown in, interpretation, you like that, let me know, because I don't make videos like this too often. I often watch them back, just to get back into a set of rules and learn stuff again, and they're useful to me. And I think other people have told me that as well, so they are useful, but just, let me know if you want to see more videos like this. Let me know. I do what I can do. So there you go, folks. Again, I'm going to consolidate these videos into 2 or 3 separate videos, so it'll be an hour or so long each or so. So you don't have to work through all these different episodes or parts to follow along. Okay, folks, take care. I hope you enjoyed. Leave comments. Let me know what you think. Feedback is always appreciated. Take care, my friends. And again, I will be continuing this battle and posting updates on Shotgun Bayonet vlog. Let you guys know how it turned out. And if I picked up any other ideas on how the rules are interpreted or actually played, if I made any mistakes. So stay tuned, folks. Take care.